031 Sulu, northern coastline of the Strait of Hormuz. A mobile launcher, repositioned under the cover of darkness, is now pointing south, directly into the world's most critical shipping lane. The system loaded onto that launcher is not a conventional missile. It is not something a standard naval defense battery was designed to stop. It is the Fattah, Iran's hypersonic glide vehicle, operational, position, and aimed at 21 miles of ocean that the entire world cannot afford to lose. 20% of the world's oil supply moves through this single corridor every day. On an average morning, a vessel clears the Strait of Hormuz every 6 minutes. There is no alternative route, no pipeline that matches the volume, no canal that can redirect the traffic. The Strait of Hormuz is not simply important. It is irreplaceable, and Iran sits directly above it. For decades, Iran's position here relied on familiar tools: fast attack craft, diesel submarines, minefields, land-based anti-ship missiles. That architecture was already serious. It already demanded respect from every naval planner working the Gulf. But what Iran has now positioned along this coastline is different, fundamentally different. And most analysts are still calculating what it actually means for the ships passing beneath it. Iran officially unveiled the Fattah in May 2023. Iranian officials claimed speeds exceeding Mach 13 during terminal approach, 13 times the speed of sound. But raw speed alone is not why this system changes the threat environment. A conventional anti-ship missile is fast, but its arc is calculable. A radar system can project where it will be and place an interceptor in that path. Point defense systems like the Phalanx, the CRAM, and the SM-6 were designed precisely for that problem. They are effective, refined over decades. The Fattah does not commit to a fixed arc. It rides the upper atmosphere, adjusting its flight path during approach. The terminal phase, the final seconds before impact, can involve lateral maneuvers that compress the intercept window to a point where existing defense systems are working against their own design limits. That is not a theoretical concern. It is an engineering reality that every major naval power, including the United States, is currently working to solve. But what most analysts are missing about this deployment is not the missile itself. It is where Iran chose to aim it, and exactly who they are sending a message to. That is what we are covering in the next 4 minutes. Iran does not deploy a weapon like this without calculating who is watching. There are 3 separate audiences for this move, and each one is receiving a different message. The first audience is Washington. The United States Navy has maintained a carrier presence in the Gulf region for decades. That presence is not merely operational, it is political. It signals that the U.S. considers these waters open, that it retains the capacity to project power into the Persian Gulf on its own terms. The Fattah deployment directly challenges that signal. It does not make a carrier strike group obsolete. That would be an overstatement. But it forces every strike group commander transiting the strait to account for a threat that existing shipboard intercept solutions were not specifically designed to defeat. That uncertainty has value, strategic value, even if the missile is never used. The second audience is regional: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, where the U.S. Fifth Fleet is headquartered. Every Gulf state hosting American military infrastructure is now within the expanded threat envelope of Iran's hypersonic capability. These states have built their security relationships with Washington, partly on the premise that American missile defense systems could provide meaningful protection against Iranian strikes. Patriot batteries, THAAD deployments, integrated air defense networks. All of it was designed with conventional ballistic and cruise missile threats in mind. Hypersonic glide vehicles operate in a different flight regime entirely, and every defense minister in the Gulf knows it. The third audience is domestic. Iran has faced sustained economic pressure from international sanctions. The nuclear negotiations that dominated years of diplomatic engagement have produced no durable agreement. The Fattah deployment, broadcast on state television, framed as sovereign capability, is also a message to Iranians. That pressure has not produced surrender. That Iranian engineers have placed the country in a category that, until recently, included only the United States, Russia, and China. 018 Zulu. A U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft completes a surveillance pass along Iran's southern coastline, The imagery collected during that pass is processed within hours. The launcher position is logged, its orientation confirmed. Simultaneously, aboard a carrier strike group escort operating in the Gulf of Oman, the operations officer updates the threat assessment board. The Fattah's estimated range means a launcher positioned anywhere along Iran's southern coastline can reach targets throughout the strait, throughout the Gulf, and well beyond into the Gulf of Oman. The strike group is inside that range. It has been inside that range since it entered the region. The difference now is the nature of the threat sitting at the other end of that range equation. 2 Ghadir-class submarines have been tracked by passive sonar assets ahead of the formation. Both boats hold position in shallow water on the Iranian coastal shelf. Neither has made an aggressive maneuver. Neither has activated targeting systems. They are simply present, positioned, watching. An MH-60R Seahawk launches from the escort destroyer for a localization pass. The crew deploys passive sonobuoys in a bracketing pattern. The submarines are tracked, logged, reported. No engagement authority. No hostile act declared. This is what Iranian layered deterrence looks like in practice. Hypersonic launchers on the coastline above. Submarines in the water below, fast attack craft positioned further west, inside the Gulf. No single element designed to win a battle. Every element designed to complicate one. Understanding why Iran made this move now requires stepping back from the missile itself and looking at the pattern of Iranian strategic behavior over the past 2 decades. Iran has consistently pursued what military analysts describe as an asymmetric denial strategy. The objective is not to build a force capable of defeating the United States in a conventional engagement. That objective was never realistic given the resource gap. Instead, Iran has invested specifically in capabilities designed to raise the cost of American military action in the region, to make any strike against Iranian territory expensive enough that the calculation in Washington shifts. Mines that can disrupt shipping without attribution, proxy networks across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen that extend Iran's reach far beyond its borders. Submarines that complicate anti-submarine warfare in shallow coastal water, dense coastal missile batteries. And now, a hypersonic strike system that challenges the point defense architecture American forces have spent decades refining. Each capability alone is manageable. Together, they form what Iranian military doctrine frames as layered deterrence. Overlapping threats designed to ensure that any adversary contemplating military action against Iran must account for costs at multiple levels simultaneously. The Fattah fills a specific gap in that architecture: the ability to threaten high-value naval assets, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, with a strike profile that existing shipboard defense systems cannot reliably intercept. Iran has stated publicly that the Fattah is a retaliatory capability, not a first-strike weapon, a deterrent employed in response to aggression against Iranian territory or interests. That framing matters. A weapon positioned as defensive carries different diplomatic weight than one presented as offensive. Iran maintains the deterrent posture while preserving the capacity to employ the system in scenarios that its own doctrine would define as a response to provocation. Where that threshold sits, what constitutes aggression sufficient to authorize a launch decision, is precisely what no one outside Iranian military command can answer with confidence. And that uncertainty is itself part of the deterrent. But the Fattah is only one part of what Iran has now positioned in this region. The second system is less discussed, and in some ways more immediately dangerous to Gulf shipping than a hypersonic missile. That is the subject of the next video. 0451 Zulu. The carrier strike group clears the narrowest point of the transit corridor. The Ghadir submarines have repositioned, moving back toward the Iranian coastal shelf as the formation moves into wider water. The hypersonic launcher on the northern coastline remains oriented toward the southern transit lane. It has not moved. It has not been recalled. It simply remains there as the carrier and her escorts pass beneath its range arc and continue east. No weapon fired, no incident declared, no formal communication exchange between the two forces. What happened in these hours will not appear in a press release. It will appear in intelligence assessments and quiet recalibrations that follow every significant development in this long-running strategic competition. The deployment of hypersonic missiles along the Strait of Hormuz does not change the fact that the United States Navy will continue to transit these waters. It will. That commitment has held through every escalation cycle of the past 4 decades. What the deployment does change is the environment in which that presence operates. The threat density has increased. The intercept problem has become harder. The margin for error in any scenario that moves from posturing toward kinetics has narrowed. Iran has not closed the strait. It cannot close it indefinitely. The economic and military response would be overwhelming, but Iran does not need to close the strait to extract strategic value from controlling the threat environment that sits above it. Presence in these waters has always been a form of power. Iran has just extended the reach and complexity of that presence into a domain it did not occupy 2 years ago. The strait remains open, the launchers remain in place, and every vessel that transits that 21-mile corridor does so inside a threat envelope that did not exist before. In strategy, the most consequential shifts rarely announce themselves with a shot. They announce themselves with a positioning.